As I was going through the information overload that is the war in Ukraine, I noticed a certain topic is missing. A topic that is essential when it comes to every war: peace. So in this video, I will try to cover this part, and not from an ideological standpoint that aggressor must always lose, but from a realistic analysis, looking at history. Ukraine's recent counteroffensive success in Kharkiv and Kherson region has raised hopes that a larger rollback of Russian troops is at hand. But this remains a daunting task. Russia continues to occupy roughly 1/5 of the land of Ukraine. However, Ukraine is ever more confident on the battlefield victory. Russia, on the other hand, has called up its reserves. Both sides are eyeing for a larger, bloodier times ahead. This raises a question: is peace even possible? Most wars ends in deals, and diplomacy is how you get there. As winter bites, we should expect to see more voices safely far away from the battlefield suggesting that it is time to talk about peace. Such voices can be heard now in the western capitals, slowly and carefully nudging Ukraine towards negotiated settlement. However, victory, not peace, is the priority of Ukrainian leadership, with President Volodymyr Zelensky declaring that Ukraine will not give up any of its territory to end the war, and is adamant on taking back all of the land including Crimea. But a time will come when peace will have to be made, and any agreement will need to be accepted not only by Ukraine and Russia, but by a larger international community who will act as its guarantor. But is peace even possible? Is Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin willing to negotiate? And how would a road to peace look like? Zelensky has demanded a full withdrawal of Russian troops from its territory, payment for the war damages, and punishment for the war crimes committed by Russian troops. Zelensky has personally signed a directive that categorically forbids him to speaking with Putin. This practically implied that the Kiev official stance is a change in government in Russia as a prerequisite for talks. The Ukrainian army has taken the initiative on the front lines and has liberated large portions of Ukrainian land. So from their perspective, negotiations are a means for Russia to buy time. It is evident from Ukraine's standpoint that they will not accept any peace as of now, unless all the regions lost since the invasion in February are returned. The ultimate goal of Ukraine is evident and clear. It wants all the territory back from Russia. However, understanding Russian goals is essential to determining whether peace can be achieved or not. Vladimir Putin entered Ukraine with many goals in mind. He wanted to intimidate Ukraine into submission and secure its future as a client state, much like Belarus. Before the war, Putin made contradictory and sometimes impossible to meet demands. Some of these demands were a legally binding recognition that Ukraine will never be allowed to join NATO. This demand was ultimately rejected by US as it claims to have an open door policy for all the aspiring members. A limit to the deployment of troops and Western weapons into the NATO eastern flank. This was also rejected by US as this would have taken NATO back to the 1997 borders, something that is impossible for Baltic and NATO eastern flank to accept. A third demand was denazification of Ukraine. Ukraine does suffer a far-right fringe, including the neo-Nazi-linked group Azov Battalion, who became famous for the defense of Mariupol. However, the neo-Nazi threat in Ukraine is minimal, as evident by their electoral victories. Another demand by Russian president was an acceptance of Donbas as a sovereign territory. President Putin wanted to implement Minsk II Accords, which would have given Donbas significant autonomy in Ukraine and subsequently control over the central government. And the final goal was acceptance of Crimea as a legitimate part of Russia. For its part, Moscow has long since abandoned its initial goals of toppling the Ukrainian government and rolling back NATO borders to 1997, and has said that it is open to negotiate without any preconditions. To understand the Moscow's bottom line for Ukraine, we need to look at the only other invasion Putin has undertaken during his decade-long rule over Russia. We will discuss this in the next video, where I will analyze Moscow's minimum objective in Ukraine, without which it will not end hostilities. To understand why it is absolutely important for Putin to win the war in Ukraine, and when I successfully predicted that Russia will mobilize the troops and Europe will try to use Russian assets as a war reparations, watch this video. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and share, as this would help and motivate me to make more content. Thank you and have a good day.